Hello, I'm Professor Guillén. Today is April 5th, 2020, and I'm talking to Dan Schwab, who is the co-president of D&H Distributing and a Wharton alum from our undergraduate program. Dan, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your firm, D&H Distributing. What do you do along the value chain?
So we are a family and employee-owned wholesaler of technology products. We do about $4.5 billion in revenue, and we're in the United States and Canada. So we're basically the connector from the manufacturers to retailers and resellers nationally. And our business is split pretty much half commercial, half consumer. So the commercial would be selling into resellers who sell to doctor's office, medical firms, law firms around the country. The other half would be consumer, where we're selling to retailers and e-tailers such as Best Buy or Costco or all the college bookstores. A good example would be the University of Pennsylvania would be one of them in the country. And when you think about the products that we're doing today, we really are supporting technology needs for healthcare, for hospitals and doctors' offices. A lot of schools, we're working closely with schools for Chromebooks and other technologies, allowing students to have remote and distance learning. For instance, Philadelphia School District's looking to get 50,000 Chromebooks for their students. And finally, we're enabling small businesses across North America to work from home.
Excellent. So I think today you're joining us from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes. So how or in which ways has the the supply chain being affected by the COVID-19 crisis?
Well, interestingly, we're one of the few industries that hasn't been as disrupted as others. You think about it, areas such as food, staples, technology products, certain categories are really experiencing tremendous growth. So we happen to be in one of those industries. So there's a lot of strains on our organization and our industry. And that technology is primarily being used for work from home for a lot of companies that had not fully deployed their work from home technologies, medical institutions that need to focus on telemedicine and a quick pivot of their focus. So that's become a really dire need that we've been focusing a lot of our efforts on. And even some products such as Xboxes, which are really, if consumers are in their homes, they're requiring those types of products as well.
I see. Are there any links along the supply chain globally that you need to address right now because they're not working as it would be desirable?
There's a lot of links in the supply chain that are in the process of being reconstituted, rebuilt. It all started in January, February, when the virus hit Asia, and a lot of those factories, especially in the Wuhan province, were shut down. That's where a lot of technology products are made, or components for technology products. So we started to have a slower supply chain. Then we experienced this incredible increase in demand, 50 to 100% increases in the demand for notebooks and desktops, headphones and mice and keyboards and monitors, which are the primary products along with home networking for working from home. So it was a double whammy, increased demand and diminished supply. So the manufacturers have really been putting a tremendous effort. They've been airing products in when normally would come via boat, which could take 4 to 5 weeks. They're now paying the additional freight. They're doing everything they can to pivot and adjust their supply lines. And I would say that at the end of March, most of those technology products were almost depleted in the United States. Very, very hard to find those, especially in quantity. We are seeing really good glimmers of hope that by about mid-April, the supply starts to pick up. And by the end of the month in early May, we have a tremendous amount of inventory that the manufacturers really have put through a yeoman's effort to get the factories up and running and be creative in how they bring these products to market. So really a lot of disruptions on the inbound side, but even the outbound side, what's interesting is a lot of the e-tailers where you would buy product from, and we do drop shipments on behalf of a lot of e-tailers, they no longer are taking them into their warehouses when they ship it because they're focusing on consumer staples and food products and healthcare products. So that means that those products either need to be shipped directly to consumers, other retailers and e-tailers are trying to fill that gap. A lot of retailers have closed storefronts, obviously, especially in the most hardest hit markets. You're seeing this both inbound and outbound supply chain, which has put a tremendous strain on cargo ships, on air carriers, on all the UPS, FedEx to try and deliver all these products. But I think things are really starting to get better in the last week or so.
I see. So lastly, tell me about what are your expectations concerning what may happen after we bring the pandemic under control? and we can restart the economy. Are you expecting a slow recovery, like people refer to it as a U-shaped recovery? Or are you expecting more of a V-shaped recovery much, much faster in the next few months?
Well, I've heard economists predict a U shape, a V shape. I've heard a W where there's two dips. I've heard an L shape where we stay flat. Anyone that says they know the answer is they're guessing. So I'll hesitate to do so. I will tell you that it is a very dynamic marketplace. There's a lot of concerns that with this influx in supply, that will there be a recession come this summer? Will business slow up? We're really starting to see a lot of changes. And I think it has a lot to do with consumer demand and whether services pick up in the United States. It's too soon to predict that. So today what we see is some categories experiencing tremendous growth and other categories having tremendous drop-off. So a good example from a technology standpoint is you think about Fortune 5,000 firms. They're no longer buying technology within their headquarters. So they're not buying digital signage and large copiers and those types of products because there's no one in the office today. So those dollars have been shifted to the work from home endeavor. And when they go back to the office, the question will be, will those CapEx projects be put on hold because they're concerned about consumer or business spending? So that's really one of the big questions we have. The biggest thing that I think we'll see is a dramatic change and modifications to the supply chain in North America. And this is really manufacturers starting to hedge their bets and have manufacturing in other countries. It's affecting the whole just-in-time model of how products are brought to market. There's the risk with this whole just-in-time model. That means that there's less wiggle room if you have a supply chain hiccup. So some product categories are backed up and they're worried about too much inventory. There's a lot of other ones where industry experts are looking at should they be maintaining a buffer stock to prevent that. So it's really dynamic. I think it's critical that everyone stays very close to the marketplace and they maintain their nimbleness.
I see. So one of the most important, perhaps long-term consequences of this crisis might be a reconfiguration of the supply chain, as you were pointing out, in a way that enhances the resilience of the chain as opposed to the efficiency, right? Because obviously holding more inventory comes at a cost.
Exactly right. I think it'll be probably less of the maintaining excess inventory and more of the modifications of the supply chain. So this all started when the tariffs began with China a year ago. And in that case, a lot of manufacturers started to adjust their supply chains, look for new production in other countries. The challenge was they weren't sure if it was temporary or long-term. The tariffs were coming on and off. They had temporary deadlines. They were extended. So they weren't sure how far to swing that pendulum. Today, now that you have the virus impact and you see how fragile the supply chain can be, I think that coupled with the tariffs are forcing people or already have forced people to relook at their supply chains, relook at their manufacturing, ensure they have multiple routes to market. It's too much of a risk to have all their eggs in one basket. Even though they may be slightly more efficient, I think the insurance policy of having multiple options clearly is insurance most people wish they had today.
I see. Thank you so much, Dan, for helping us understand all of these really, really important issues along the global supply chains for critical products, essential products right now, such as electronics and some kinds of medical equipment. So this was Dan Schwab, co-president of D&H Distributing, speaking with us from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Thank you again, Dan.